What is up, guys? Tal, the traveling clat, back here with another video. Today we're looking at something a little bit darker, a little bit sadder from Douglas Murray, speaking specifically about the atrocities that Hamas committed on October 7th. Let's take a look.
Imagine that the Nova Party had taken place in New York. Imagine that at 6:30 in the morning, rockets started to land over your head. Imagine within about 20 minutes, big bearded men with machine guns and Kalashnikovs and grenades came and raped your friends in front of you and then killed them in front of you and then came for you next, and in your last moments that was what you saw. One of the, without getting too gruesome, but let me just perhaps do so for once to hit home the point. One of the people who I interviewed who had been in the Nova Party had said at one point that there was a young girl on her knees. One of the Hamas terrorists had killed her best friend in front of her, and they were debating whether or not they should take her into Gaza or kill her, and she was screaming, "Please don't kill me, please don't kill me," and they shot her through the face, and she was still shouting that when her face fell off. That's what these guys are.
You know what I find really crazy? Now that we're in this time where hostages are being exchanged for Palestinian terrorists, and these girls are coming back from captivity in Hamas, and they're uploading this propaganda because Hamas forces them to smile and speak in Arabic and pretend like everything was all great inside of their terror dungeons in the Gaza Strip. You have these idiots in the West and these Arab Muslim extremists all over the world saying, look at how Hamas treats, this is how the Arabs treat our captives, as opposed to how the Zionists treat. But they completely erase these stories. And when you bring up these stories, the stories that Douglas Murray is talking about right now, they'll say it's Zionist propaganda. They'll say that the Israeli army did this to its people. But no, this is the reality, ladies and gentlemen. This is how Arab Muslim Islamists, when they attack people and they take people into captivity, this is what they do. ISIS did this to the Yazidis, to the Kurds. Al-Qaeda has been doing this to its own people. Boko Haram has been doing this to its own people. This is typical playbook Arab Islamic extremism, and it's been going on planet Earth for about 1,000 years. This is what they have been doing every time they conquested and conquered. This is how they treat their captives. It's nothing new. Unfortunately, we're seeing it unfold again, but now people want to turn a blind eye to it in the name of social justice.
Does any student in America understand this, or can have any understanding that these people would do that to them? My just prayer is that they don't, that they're simply lacking in imagination. But if this happened to them, and if this happened to them and they, like the Nova survivors, came to New York for an exhibition about the Nova Party, and then they find in the streets of New York outside the exhibit American students and others chanting support for the people who did this to their friends, I don't know how some of these, they're so brave, these young people, to still be going around the world telling their story.
Absolutely.
When they go around much of the world and they meet people they tell their story to who are supporting the people who did it.
This is, by the way, why you wonder how people like me or people like my friends Barack or any of these creators that you've been watching over the last year who have changed their whole lives. I was a travel vlogger for 10 years. All I did was travel around the world and tell cool stories and vlogs about traveling. Shifted so radically in another direction, left our tour. It's because of this. This is the reason why. We see this injustice and we can't shut up about it. I am refusing to let my countrymen, the people from my community, the Arabs, the Muslims, the Jews, the Druze, the Bedouins, everybody and anybody that was murdered on that day and abused and tortured and is still being tortured. Over 90 hostages still in Gaza today. I refuse to let them die in vain. I refuse to let their memory I refuse to allow, without a fight, people in America and in the West chant Hamas and Hezbollah and pro-Hamas and pro-Hezbollah chants in the streets. I refuse to let that happen without putting up a fight. That's how I get up and motivated every day. That's how I get up and motivated to do this and not make a penny off of it. Because for those of you guys who don't know, I've lost money over the course of the last year doing this. For everybody who thinks I'm paid by the Mossad or the Israeli government, know that the only thing I actually make money off is my merch sales. So if you want to support my channel, buy some merchandise at thetravelingcloud.com. We got new designs coming out very soon. But that's the reality. The reality is that if you're not joining my Patreon, if you're not becoming a member, if you're not buying my merchandise or sending me money on Buy Me a Coffee PayPal, I don't make any money. And there's thousands of us, I don't say hundreds that are really doing it at top quality, but thousands of us who have given up everything in our lives to support Israel. And it's because of what Douglas Murray is talking about right now. It's because I will not sit for it. I won't allow this bullshit propaganda to tell the story of my people without putting in a fight. I'm unwilling to let the atrocities that my grandparents and my family went through die in vain. I won't allow it. And especially what people went through on October 7th. We all saw the videos. We saw the horror with our own eyes. We won't just let it die.
This is a level of human evil I don't think that... Human lack of empathy, perhaps I can say, that is beyond my comprehension. I just want to say one other thing on that. We have seen something like this before. We saw it in the 60s and 70s when part of the left in Europe decided to take up the cause of the PLO. You know, very interestingly, one of the things about the Entebbe raid that people don't realize is that two of the hijackers were members of the German left. One of them used to live with former Foreign Minister Schröder. And they had decided after World War II there was one thing they wouldn't be, which was they wouldn't be Nazis. And this is quite a good idea. It's a good orienting principle, you know. Don't be Nazis. But I just want to stress that even that isn't enough on its own, not with other moral cause to you, not with other things in your system. Because by the 60s, the PLO and all of those groups, some of the German left fell into that. And one of the things about the Entebbe hijacking, which is not well enough known, is...
It's a story, by the way, that most kids in Israel grow up knowing. Because it's one of the scariest, but also one of the most heroic moments in Israeli military history.
But when the plane was landed in Uganda, the main hijacker, the German leftists, sorted out the passengers, Jews and non-Jews. Mm-hmm. Jews and non-Jews. Now, it wasn't just Israelis and non-Israelis. They got the American Jews into the line with the other Jews. And there was a man on the plane at Entebbe, one of several people on the plane who was a Holocaust survivor. And as he heard this German left-winger shouting orders to the Jews after the selection process, he showed his tattoo from the camp and said, "I had thought that people had changed." And the hijacker has been quoted by several people present as having said to that man, "I'm not a Nazi, I'm an idealist."
Boom. If there is no better way to put it than how Douglas Murray did right now, I don't know a better way to put it. You people, you liberals in the left in America, specifically you white people who have nothing to do with the Middle East, who have taken up the cause of the Palestinians, you are Nazis. You are the literal manifestation of a Nazi in the modern day. And as much as you want to call Jewish people Nazis and we're all Nazis and white colonizers, you can't colonize this, baby. This is ancient Middle Eastern DNA right here. Soak it up. All of my family are refugees to this land. Every single one of them has a right to live right here in the state of Israel, loud and proud. You guys are the Nazis. You guys are the literal manifestation of the Nazis. Welcome. Everything you fight so hard to not be, you are. Why? Because Palestinianism, Arabism in the Middle East, Islamism is supremacism, and it is Nazism in its purest form. It is Nazism against any ethnic minority, against Jewish people, and against anybody who doesn't practice Islam predominantly under the guise of Arabism. If that's too hard for you to understand, just Google the history of the Arabs in the Middle East. See how they conquered and conquested and created a colonial empire in the Middle East that forced hundreds of thousands of people under their wing for no better reason other than progressing colonialism and building an empire and progressing a religion they deemed as the one and only religion that in reality took many things from other religions. So just keep that in mind. Douglas Murray said it here perfectly.
We've seen these people before, but we've seen them off before.
I wondered before we go to questions, in your time in Israel, you've talked to survivors, you've gone to jails where terrorists are being held, you've of course met with so many political leaders. You shared an image I don't think any of us will ever forget about what happened to the woman on her knees at the Nova Festival, and I think each one of us in this room has different images that we go back to. I wondered if you could give us a different kind of image, because one of the things you talked about when you recently won the Alexander Hamilton Award is you've said that your friends have commented to you that you've changed since October 7th. And the way that you've changed is that you're actually less pessimistic. So give us some reasons that you've left some of that pessimism behind, maybe through some people that you've met.
Well, the real thing, is...
Before he continues, because I have kind of an idea of where he's probably going to go with this. I think that most people, especially in the Jewish world or pro-Israel world, have changed significantly since October 7th. Like, I know myself, I have. And like I said earlier, many people in my community, many people from my religious group, from my country, we've changed because we were forced to change. We something that was done to us as a community of people, unlike ever in our generation, in our time, it shocked all of us to our core. It brought generational trauma that we've all sort of harbored for decades out again and made us deal with demons that we haven't had to really face. At least not in recent time at the level that we've had to. And so I think that's the reality of the situation. It's like many of us have changed. Many people who have been on that pro-Israel side, who are Zionists or Jews, have had to face realities that they haven't had to face, at least since their grandparents' generation.
One of the first times I was in Israel, I had a very, a rather personal feeling. I heard you said this before, but there was rocketing in the north, and I hadn't been under any serious bombardment before. I'd seen stuff in Iraq and elsewhere. And I remember coming back from a day in the north where there's been rocketing, as there was again recently in the town of Sfat. And I thought something very strange when I got home, which was I thought I could look my grandparents in the face. And what I mean by that is, for my generation in Britain, it was always the question, would we be able to do what our grandparents had done? Living through the Blitz in London, night after night, and not losing their faith and not losing their strength. And I used to hear stories of that, terrible stories, when I was growing up, of what that was like. And from those who went and fought, ones who didn't come back. And in my country of birth, Great Britain, like in America, every country is filled with family stories. My grandmother on my father's side lost her father in the First War and then her brothers in the Second. And always fighting the Germans. And every family was like that. And it was always this question of, if the time of trial came, would we be up to it? And that was what, just in my small little way that day, I remember thinking. I got a little taste of what my forebears went through.
Correct. I think about just what my own parents went through as kids here in Israel. I talked about the story before. My mom having to learn how to put on a gas mask at the young age, because Saddam Hussein was threatening to bomb Tel Aviv, to bomb Israel's population centers with chemical weapons. And considering the fact that my grandparents ran from Iraq because of Islamic extremism to Israel, they had nowhere else to go. They had to flee. And my mom, a first generation born Israeli of Iraqi heritage, had to learn how to put on a gas mask because those same people that chased them out of Iraq were now chasing them in Israel. And so I think about just the last couple of months. I've been running to the bomb shelter from Hezbollah and Houthi and Gazan bombs. I'm third generation in this world now under my grandparents, my parents, now me, who have had to run into bomb shelters because of Islamic extremism in this region. And then that tells me everything I need to know about how it's not us that are the problem. It's clearly not us that are the problem. But Douglas brings up such a good point. Would any of us be strong enough? And I'm assuming that the point he's going to make is that you see Israelis and you see their tenacity. You see how we rise to the occasion. And the reality is we don't sit here and complain. We just do because we're used to this shit. It's terrible that we are, but this is how we live. I haven't been here my entire life. I haven't lived here my entire life. I've had the privilege of being able to travel around the world and live sort of partly in it. But this is the first time I've really lived here under proper war. Well, you don't complain. You just do. You do what you need to do. There's fringes of our society that do, but a vast majority of us just pull ourselves by our bootstraps, and we go for it. And we survive. And we thrive. And that's just what we do because we have to. Because we don't really have another option.
Tiniest one. But everyone in the West, somewhere in our back of our heads, has this thing. And Israelis had it. Always. And, there was always a thing since 1973 in particular, and the first Lebanon War, second Lebanon War. Always this question of, are the young people going to be up to it? And I have so much admiration and pride and so much more that this generation of young Israelis were put to the test, and they've been magnificent. And if you see what these young
Absolutely
men and women
correct.
do on a daily basis, from the south of Gaza to the mountains of Lebanon and Syria in the north, and they don't do any of it with hatred in their hearts. They don't. Some of what they have to do, just some of what they've had to do is just beyond description. But they do it from love of their country, love of their people, love of their tradition, defense of their people, defense of their tradition. They know that they are fighting for the Jewish people as their forebears have before, but this time with a state, with an army, with an
Absolutely.
Air Force. And they've stepped up to this moment, and they have been extraordinary. People will write books about this generation. And I just say, the best thing about it is that it should tell us that there is also a better way. There is a better way than this nihilism and hatred which
Correct.
has been bred in America. There is something else other than this culture of resentment and failure, and it is failure. There is something better than this culture of grievance and I don't have enough, or someone else must have something. Or as Ronald Reagan said once, this idea that if there's a fat man standing by the side of a thin man, it must mean the fat man took something from the thin man. There is something else than this thing that has ended up in the last year being a celebration of a death cult. There is such a thing as gratitude instead of resentment, pride instead of envy, and pride in the real sense. Pride in something you should be proud of. Pride in protecting your people and your faith and your community, and indeed, in my view, the civilized world. So I've just I can't even begin listing the number of people, but
You can see how emotional he gets when speaking to this too, because if you come here and part of the big push on this channel is, and you've seen me do a lot of on the ground work in the last years, I want you guys to come to Israel. Obviously, under better circumstances, hopefully when the war is over. But people who watch me, I'd love to one day host trips here. I'd love for you guys to come and talk to me, see me in person, meet my friends that I've hosted on the channel. When you see what Israelis have to put up with, just a psychological war too, generationally, and then also just fucking surviving these stupid Islamists, who keep trying to kill us, and seeing that the psychological war of understanding you're on this tiny little dot in a vast ocean of crazy people who want to murder you for no other reason than the fact that you're Jewish. They don't have any legitimate ties to this land. They don't have any desire for peace. They just want to kill you because you're a Jew. When you come and comprehend that from this place, it changes your perspective. But you have to see it in those eyes. Douglas Murray really got it. I think he really got that experience when he really understood it.
Anyone who feels down from spending too much time with people in America should come to Israel.
Wow.
And
Look at that.
See that, among other things, the people who thought the next generation of Israelis just wanted to party were wrong. And it turned out not to be an either-or thing. You can fight for your country and your people, and you can still dance. And that's what they're showing.
And you know what? That's the difference between us and, for example, I'm going to be a little mean right now, the Lebanese people. Lebanese people, they just want to party. They don't want any strings attached. They don't want to actually defend their country. They haven't had the ability to, but I am throwing Lebanese people under the bus right now because instead of stepping up to the plate, standing up for their own country, they've just kind of shit the bed, for a lack of better terms. And Lebanon looks like crap now because the Lebanese people haven't stepped up to the plate to defend themselves from the Islamists in their society. This is the truth about Israel. Lots of people here want to party. Lots of people here want to goof off. They want to travel the world. They want to do whatever. When push comes to shove, I remember I was abroad on October 7th. I remember the diaspora of Israelis and Jews from all corners of planet Earth to come back to fight in this war, not because they had to, because they felt the need to. That doesn't happen anywhere else on planet Earth. When a war breaks out, you don't fly back to your home country. Most people run away. Our people came back in the hundreds of thousands. And that's what makes Israel amazing. I love you guys a long time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, Clats. If you believe in my content and want to support me, just know your help is needed. There's a bunch of great ways to support me, being PayPal, Buy Me a Coffee, or joining my Patreon community down below. Patreon is the best way to support my channel, and you'll get a bunch of cool perks depending on what tier you join. Another great way to support me is by buying my merchandise on thetravelingclat.com. I regularly drop new merch designs like this beautiful hat, or this amazing shirt, where you can support the channel and get something cool for yourself. I also have an amazing Discord community with people from all over the world. Thank you so much for your support.